understand what CERN is, if they would just indulge me for a little bit, they'll have a clear understanding of why they're doing it, what they're looking for, and what is the potential and the facts that will come out of these experiments. CERN, basically, is a device that will allow them to examine particles in their initial state, not after everything is bonded together. That's a very simple way to look at what CERN is doing. They're trying to find the glue that holds everything together, is what they're doing. That's the purpose of CERN. Now, what has come out of CERN is called antimatter, which was first actually produced. It was first produced in 1955, and CERN is a very old organization, but it was produced in 1955, and they found positrons, which are anti-electrons. To understand what antimatter is, I'm going to have to explain the very bare basics of what matter is. And believe me, it's going to get very weird here shortly, because you're going to begin to see exactly what they're doing. But you have to understand what you're looking at now. The matter and antimatter are in fact opposites. Now, the matter that we have in front of us, if you take a piece of wood, nothing happens. It's just a piece of wood. But if you set that wood on fire, you have caused a reaction. And then it's in a dangerous potential state. It's active. If you have a battery outside of your cell phone, it does nothing. You put the battery inside the cell phone, the electrons begin to flow. The electrons will flow from one place to another. Essentially, that's what electronics are, the control of electrons. They control the direction, the speed of electrons, which create tiny pulses. They flow or don't flow, flow or don't flow. Those are called gates. Those gates form computers. And with a computer, we can do fascinating things. This is why they did, in fact, take Nikola Tesla's findings, because he discovered some things with electrons and protons that were very fascinating. Electricity within itself is a visual observation of electrons and protons in their active state, non-controlled state. Antimatter is the opposite of the matter that we can control. Antimatter cannot be controlled. In fact, when they first produced antimatter, they had to have a facility to contain it, because unlike the wood, where you have to have a reaction to cause it to burn, antimatter, you have to have a containment to cause it not to burn. That's the only way they can store it, with massive facilities to store it. Let me give you an example. In a nuclear bomb, it takes timing, which takes electronics, and the explosions have to be just right to cause a reaction. That's a nuclear bomb, like the Hiroshima bomb, which takes pounds of nuclear material to cause it to react. And it has to be very precise. Well, let's go the opposite. Let's say we had antimatter, correct? If we had 1 gram of antimatter, that would equal about 42 or 40, let's just say 45 kilotons of TNT, which is about 4 Hiroshima bombs. And it's already inherently unstable. It's unstable. The only way to harness antimatter is to contain it. And it takes very large and expensive facilities to contain just 1 gram of antimatter. Some have failed, some have not. If those containment devices fail, they cause mega quakes. That's what happens when they fail. Now, we're talking small, tiny drops of antimatter. I mean, just drops of raw antimatter. It's highly unstable. It has to be isolated from the rest of reality when it's contained in a literal sense. Now, given that this can be weaponized, which is true, there are other implications that the average person has not thought about. Our body is held together by that glue that they're searching for, that bonds matter together. Those who understand what's called the standard model, they have a pretty good idea of what would happen if the force table in the standard model is just an explanation of how all things work. You're dealing with matter and force, and they have categorized the elements of matter, everything we can touch and feel and observe, in what's called quarks, the building blocks, of protons and nuclei, and leptons, which are essentially, well, that would be like an electron. And then we have force. Force are lumps of energy that transmit the forces that bring matter to life. But like a photon, it carries the electromagnetic force. Without a photon, we couldn't produce motors or anything else. Without gluons, which carry a strong force, neutrons and protons would not be held together. In other words, the universe would not exist. And of course, you have U, W, and Z particles, which are for weak forces that govern radioactivity. So you have this standard model, and they have broken this down. But what they're looking for is a higher explanation of how everything works. This is the particle they're searching for. Now, they found half of it. They already found a component of it. That was the Higgs field. Now, the Higgs field is an explanation of they found the traces of the Higgs field. They can now observe the Higgs field. The Higgs field is what is found wherever matter is not. In your room, the Higgs field is in operation. Listen, with the Higgs field, they can begin to alter reality as we know it. Now, a lot of people they can't capture that right away. But you have to remember, our world is made up of matter. The antimatter is what we can't see, what we can't touch, what we can't feel, though we interact with it every day. A lot of people like to think of antimatter as the other dimension, which is the opposite of this dimension. It's an inconceivable place that is hostile inherently. It's not under control. It's very hostile. This dimension would be the more tamed dimension. Here's what they've done since the 1930s. Well, actually, since the 1800s. There was a group that studied nothing but the phenomena of paranormal activity, not like you've seen on TV, not like you've seen in Hollywood, not like anyone knows about. But they studied the science behind paranormal activity and have then defined that this is called a dimensional slip, where things can obviously interact with this world all the time. And they were wondering the interactions between known matter and that type of matter. But they also found with antimatter, this antimatter can be absorbed by any realm of paranormal activity. It is, in effect, neutralized and absorbed. So there's a physical effect to the spiritual world in antimatter. And often, demonic entities and all these other paranormal things are attracted to antimatter. They're attracted to it. For every gram of antimatter that's produced, and then it's brought into this world, when they produce it, it attracts things from another dimension coming here. What is CERN going to do? Is to allow humanity to produce pounds of antimatter. People have a general understanding of matter, which we can touch and feel and observe, and antimatter, which we cannot touch, feel, or observe. However, it's working in tandem with the matter, because everything is balanced, the subject of Lucifer in the spiritual sense, because God gives everything balance. Everything has balance. There is dark, there's light, there's good, there's bad. Everything has balance. CERN has yielded so many results and gave a true definition of paranormal activity. It's beyond me that a lot of people cannot get this through the truth of the word. They can't. Antimatter is being pulled out of nowhere, out of this other dimension, which is nowhere, but everywhere. In consequence to that, they found out antimatter has a specific type of energy signature that they can, in fact, detect. This is how it's part of the process of pulling it out. Well, as it comes to find out, some of the not-so-good consequences of this process has to do with the human psyche. Stephen Hawking, he understands the implications of what could happen. He understands how it can affect the psyche. For a long time, Stephen Hawking did not believe there was a God. For a long time, he didn't. But you see, something is changing with him. He is beginning to see that everything is so precise, it's impossible for it to be happenstance. I mean, everything down to a trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a meter is absolutely precise. And he's beginning to change his mind. It's what's happening to him. He's changing his mind. He is now beginning to entertain the idea that what people call divine is in fact done by some sort of architect they have no concept of. Now, with the general basis of what CERN is doing, that's the basic idea of what they're doing, and that's exactly what they're doing with particles. Here comes the other part that's not so good. This is why they have to do another set of, listen, it's not just one experiment they're about to perform. This thing is going to run 6 months continuously colliding protons near the speed of light to analyze particles, exotic particles that are made at the beginning of the Big Bang. That's why they call it the Big Bang machine. It's the only way to observe these particles, which wink in and out of existence in, a fraction of time. A fraction of time. And the consequence of this search to gather more and more of this matter, by the way, they have a more efficient method of pulling out or gathering antimatter, which is why they need to know the properties of some more properties of this particle they have described. Once they have these properties, they will be able to extract as much antimatter as they desire efficiently. It's right now, to obtain antimatter is very inefficient. It's very inefficient. In other words, to get a pound of it would take about 10,000 years at the current rate. It's just not going to work. CERN will allow them to do that probably within a week. But here's the consequence. They've observed the energy of both matter and antimatter. They found out that antimatter is intimately tied to every single life form on this planet. They found out that energy signature is the same energy signature in all life on this planet. All life, none excluded. Found out when any life form is in the presence of antimatter, the energy of the life form changes. The energy changes. I'll put this in basic terms. A person has both dark and light already in them. It's part of their makeup. It's what you can't live in a material world without antimatter. Nothing would exist. And so a person has both good energy, which would be this realm, this realm of matter, but they also have energy of antimatter. So they're connected. A person is connected to both realms at the same time on the energy level. And they don't even know it. They don't know it. And they have found, certainly, with all the experiments they have found out why paranormal activity exists. They know exactly what it is. They don't want to tell anybody. This is why they perpetuate foolishness on television. But every single person, every single life form is connected to that realm, that other realm, into this realm of reality all the time. Now, a person's thoughts, how a person feels, and doctors know about this too, how a person feels will determine which energy they draw from. You can draw from this realm, good realm, and you have positive results. That's called faith. That's why doctors believe in it. That's why they give out placebos. They know that if a person believes something is helping them, they have it within themselves to repair. They can command their bodies to be repaired simply based on belief. And people think they work. And people have recovered from cancer. People have recovered from back injuries. Quadriplegics have been repaired simply by their own faith. This other realm, because that energy is contained in another dimension, so to speak. That's the containment wall. But when a person draws that energy in, it is the opposite of this realm. In this realm, again, we have to light a piece of wood with a flame to catch it on fire. In that realm, it's already on fire. You have to contain it to see the wood because it's engulfed in flames. It's the opposite of this realm. When a person changes their emotional state, their energy changes, and they begin to draw their energy from this other dimension, this chaotic and violent and uncontainable place where they draw dark matter from, intimately linked. And it's in operation all the time. Now, the scientists, they are aware of this. Now, here's the other part that's not so comforting. On the spring equinox, the forces change on the Earth, and they know this. They know that forces do change, which will, in fact, allow them to have better results. And believe me, it's timed perfectly. It is timed perfectly. With the basic introduction of what CERN is doing and what it is, and the dark matter and matter itself, now we get into the heart of the matter, of what's actually, there will be consequences. It's just that there have been consequences before. Nobody took notice, and the energy signature of dark matter, which, by the way, resides everywhere. But once you bring it into this realm, where we can actually see it and observe it, it attracts things from the other realm. Dark matter is tied to dark matter. Everything has a connection. Everything has a connection. That connection can never be broken by anything. If they bring dark matter into this realm, it's still connected to that realm where the dark matter came from. No matter how far away they put it anywhere, it's still connected. Because that realm is everywhere and it's still connected. Because it's connected, it effectively increases paranormal activity around where it's contained. And this is why they shift facilities of where they once kept dark matter in a college. I won't name it for the sake of the college, but the university. They had to move it to a deep underground facility because of what was happening to the people in the college. People began to have vivid dreams, nightmares. The violence began to erupt, and vile things began to happen in those places. And it's because it's a chaotic piece of matter. It is just chaotic. And it's very difficult to contain something that is so powerfully chaotic. This is what an explosion is, by the way. When an atom bomb explodes, it releases chaos. Chaos in the form of chemicals, reactions, and everything is out of order. An explosion is the absence of order. That's what an explosion is. When you contain something, you're giving it order. So it's controlled. Here's the worst part. Understanding that dark matter is always connected to its source, which is that realm where the dark matter came from, the realm that's all around us. Just imagine that dark matter being the ocean, right? Imagine this realm being the submarine. We're all in the submarine having fun, and we're doing our thing, and we have disagreements here and disagreements there. And then we find out there's a hole in the sub. But the hole is not, we thought the hole was in the sub, but it wasn't in the submarine itself. It was, in fact, in the people. The people's water inside their bodies began to increase based on their emotions. Let's just say that. And the dark matter can then come into this realm through people. That's, in fact, what they discovered in 1950. That people can also produce dark matter by way of, it's very minute, it's very tiny, but it's measurable, it's quantifiable. In fact, they now know how much energy a person has to have before they go absolutely berserk. They also know how much of that energy signature a person must have before an entity from that realm can possess them, which also allowed them to understand that not everybody can be possessed. Not everybody can be, the person has to be prepared. To be possessed, they have to be, in essence, they have to be a portal themselves to be possessed. Not everybody can be possessed. And so not to get way off target, but this dark matter is everywhere. That you know what, all these things, here's what, I mean, it really gets to me, is that these scientists, over the course of many years, have quantified, or they have calculated these things. They have extracted the truth, the facts, yet the Christians don't believe it. And these crooked people in certain places have already been harnessing this power for themselves, and it's been effective every single step of the way. In the scientific community, they see the facts. They know they don't understand it fully, and so they have experiments, and they learn along the way. In fact, they're obedient to their own disciplines, and we're not obedient to our own disciplines. So the problems about CERN, I know everybody's waiting on this. What could potentially happen from this? Well, they had another discovery, that dark matter causes other pieces of dark matter that they have contained to react. In other words, if you have a container, say you had a teaspoon of dark matter, and let's just say you had it in Pennsylvania, and somebody else had that same a teaspoon of dark matter in California, then as soon as the teaspoon of dark matter is exposed to the elements in Pennsylvania, it causes the dark matter in California to begin to activate. In other words, you lose containment in one place, containment in another place is going to be lost. It's going to be lost. So they're intimately tied together. Now, we've covered the fact that people have the signatures of the energy of dark matter in them and matter. So they contain both matter and antimatter, in a sense, the signature of energy. They're not put together. It's just that signature. And we draw upon those based upon our thoughts and what's in our minds and what's in our hearts, in a sense. With CERN, as they begin to collide these protons, dark matter is going to be produced in great numbers. I mean, in greater and greater numbers. Not only the matter, but the energy signature is going to also be released into this realm. You know what that's going to cause? It's going to cause the dark energy signature within people to begin to activate more and more. You see, it's going to become difficult for people to stay contained or controlled. In essence, they're going to become violent. They're going to have vivid dreams. The darkness within a person is absolutely going to begin to surface. And this is not theoretical. This is not some theory somebody thought of. This is absolutely 100% quantifiable, and it's happened before. It's going to happen in greater numbers this time. It will take effect. That's also been weaponized. Nobody knows this, and I probably won't be in trouble for this, but they have a weapon concerning dark matter that they can put within a country or a specific place to cause chaos. It's a weapon. They've used it before. They can unleash this, and it can cause chaos anywhere they want chaos to be rampant. Also, there's something very important about that. I know this firsthand. There are often times you have to partake in the weapons development program, and you become a rat, so to speak, in a maze, to see firsthand what the effects are going to be. They found the force that holds the dark energy or the dark matter away from this realm. They call it the wall. There's another name for that. A name of which that those particles they're going to find, they found part of it. They're going to find the other pieces that are in that wall. And when they find the other pieces to this wall, they will then be able to undo that wall. There's another name for that wall. The veil. Call it the veil. It holds back that realm. They found out what's holding back the dark energy from, because it would be absolutely destructive if the two met. But they found out. Now with this as a weapon, there is no counter weapon to this. China is building an LHC facility. They're building a particle accelerator. There are, to present day count, about 14 particle accelerators in existence. 14, not just one. All the countries are vested in the CERN facility. Every single last country. But the United States, we have 3 facilities here. 3. I can't tell you where they are. One they began to build, but they couldn't, but they went ahead and built it anyway. It's in one of the biggest states in the United States, and it's there and it's operational. It's also going to be powered up during this time. I'm saying this because when this thing does power up, the immediate effects are not what I'm worried about. That's not my concern. The psychological effects on people is going to become quite evident. And I know that people will come under some strange attacks, some strange occurrences and incidents. Absolutely going to take effect. The collider, think of a collider as hundreds of nuclear explosions taking place within 1 second, and they're containing it. It goes beyond fusion. It's in a realm by itself when they collide protons. They are going to find these particles, and within months, they're going to put into motion what we talked about today, and people are going to feel these effects. And then this other realm is going to begin to spill over in multiple places, everywhere. Violence will increase. The crucial side of this is that with this show coming up, people are going to realize all too painfully what we've talked about today, but they have to start now. They really have to. They can't make excuses for their flesh anymore.
And if we're smart enough, we can dive into them and grab their resources and pull them back into ours.
It's this kind of crap, you know. And if this guy knew about that, if the people working at CERN knew what they were doing, knew that they would tear apart people's families, knew that they would kill people and raise people from the dead and then just to kill them again, if they knew that they were going to change the land masses of Earth, if they knew that they were going to change books, movies, videos, TV shows, if they knew all that shit in advance and they did it anyway, what does that make them? What does that make them, folks?
An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through 2 slits, we should get, like the marbles, 2 bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So, they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits and it goes through neither. and it goes through just one, and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. But physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. And it was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange netherworld of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing.
How could I ever acquire enough detail to make them think that it's reality?
Well, dreams, they feel real while we're in them, right? It's only when we wake up that we realize something was actually strange. Let me ask you a question. You never really remember the beginning of a dream, do you? You always wind up right in the middle of what's going on.
I guess, yeah.
So how did we end up here?
Well, we just came from the,
Think about it, Ariadne. How did you get here? Where are you right now?
We're dreaming?
You're actually in the middle of the workshop right now, sleeping. This is your first lesson in shared dreaming. Stay calm.
Revelation 9:11. They had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. Bless this word now, Lord. Bless it in Jesus' name. So we have, coming up out of the pit, hell itself. Now, I haven't dealt much with these creatures that come up. You'll find them described in the first few verses of chapter number 9 of Revelation. That's for a future study. But this morning, I'm going to move on from dark matter and antimatter into what's happening when we connect that with what's going on right now. For example, CERN is about opening portals. It's about reaching into another dimension, and various terminology they're using. I'll read some of it for you in just a moment. But here's the important part to understand, and I'm going to try to emphasize this from here on out, because this is what I see in it. It is the merger of science and religion. Keep that in mind. That's what this is about. And depending on what entity's involved, what group, what church, whatever, they all have their own agenda, sure. But the bottom line is that it is the merger of science and religion, like I have never seen in my few short years on this earth. The Large Hadron Collider, and that's that thing that is 17 miles in circumference, about 300 feet beneath the surface of the earth. The Large Hadron Collider could open a doorway to an extra dimension, and out of this door might come something, or we might send something through it. Now, of course, that begs the question, what do you expect to come out of that door, or what would you send through that door?
Below the ground near Geneva, Switzerland, lies CERN's Large Hadron Collider. CERN, or the European Organization for Nuclear Research, was established in 1954 on the Franco-Swiss border. The organization has 22 different countries in its membership and is home to the world's largest particle collider, known as the Large Hadron Collider. Located 100 meters below the ground, the LHC is 17 miles in circumference and can accelerate particles just under the speed of light. CERN conducts many physics experiments by accelerating particles towards each other in the LHC and then colliding them and studying the results. Ultra-fast cameras record these collisions, and the data is interpreted by computers. In the early 1990s, the World Wide Web was born at CERN as a means of sharing information between computers so scientists around the world could study data collected by the organization. Now, the data collected by the LHC is compiled and sent to labs around the world through an infrastructure known as the LHC computing grid. In 2010, CERN accomplished smashing two particles together in the LHC, a task described as similar to firing two needles across the Atlantic and getting them to hit each other by the LHC's main engineer, Steve Myers. Physicists have been searching for the Higgs boson, an elementary particle and the only missing piece in the standard model of particle physics, for 40 years, until it was discovered by CERN in 2012 and then confirmed to be the so-called God particle in 2013. As a side note, the nickname God particle is misleading and derives from a book titled The God Particle: If the Universe is the Answer, What is the Question? The publishers refused to call it the goddamn particle, which the authors initially intended to exemplify how hard a particle it was to observe. In reality, the Higgs boson is a quantum excitation of the Higgs field, a field believed to exist everywhere in the universe, which gives particles mass through a process known as the Higgs effect. This is the transference of mass or energy to particles passing through the Higgs field via the Higgs boson, which contains the relative mass in the form of energy. As particles take on mass, they become heavier, slowing down and allowing attraction between particles to occur. Simply, the Higgs boson holds matter together and therefore also has the potential to tear matter apart. That said, it seems fitting that CERN has a statue of the Hindu god Shiva, the creator, destroyer, and regenerator, on display in front of their laboratories. CERN says that this deity was chosen because of a metaphor that was drawn between the cosmic dance of the Nataraja and the modern study of the cosmic dance of subatomic particles. In Hinduism, Shiva's dance has two forms. One is the Lasya form of dance, which is gentle and associated with creation, while the Tandaya is violent, dangerous, and associated with destruction. A plaque on the Shiva statue at CERN reads, "In our time, physicists have used the most advanced technology to portray the patterns of the cosmic dance." The metaphor of the cosmic dance thus unifies ancient mythology, religious art, and modern physics. However, there are many who fear that this statue is actually symbolic of CERN's intentions to rule this world like gods, controlling the dance of life from creation to destruction and through to regeneration. Many have speculated that CERN is the engine behind a satanic New World Order agenda. But could an institution as reputable as CERN be associated with such dark intentions? A strange video surfaced on the web showing what appears to be an occult human sacrifice in front of the statue of Shiva. In the video, we see robed figures walk into the light in front of the statue. They arrange themselves symmetrically. Then one of the figures is disrobed, leaving naked a woman who drops to her knees. One of the figures moves in front of the statue and produces a knife. The woman then proceeds to lie down as the rest of the figures kneel around her. The robed figure with the knife stands over her and appears to stab her. At this point, the cameraman starts running away frantically, cursing until the video ends on a shot of the Large Hadron Collider, revealing that we are in fact inside CERN. The entire video feels staged. The video begins recording moments before the figures enter the shot, as if the cameraman knew what was going to happen. The robes the figures are wearing don't seem to fit properly. You can see their legs sticking out, and it appears that people are wearing shorts or sneakers beneath their cloaks. You would imagine a sacrifice like this would take place in a more secret setting, instead of in a well-lit area in plain view of CERN offices. After the woman is supposedly stabbed, we never see the results. The cameraman simply runs off, allowing our minds to hypothesize what might have happened to her. His shaky cam and string of expletives after the supposed killing seems contrived.
Fuck. Shit. Fuck.
And ending the video with a shot of the LHC just seems a little too perfect. CERN's official statement about the video is, "This video is a work of fiction showing a contrived scene. CERN and its on-site accommodation fills up with scientists from across the world coming to CERN as part of their work. Work at CERN can take place 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, with shift work and data analysis. Persons that are authorized to access the CERN site sometimes let their sense of humor go too far, and that is what happened on this occasion. The video was filmed from an office building. Strict safety systems are in place to prevent any unauthorized access to technical and experimental facilities. CERN does not condone this kind of spoof, which breaches CERN's professional guidelines and is currently carrying out an internal investigation. While the video seems clearly fake, it is interesting that no security guards came to stop the unauthorized mock ritual. Wouldn't somebody in charge have noticed something as dramatic as a mock human sacrifice happening at the CERN facility? CERN seems pretty calm and sure of the fact that it was someone on the inside who played this prank, but their internal investigation hasn't revealed the perpetrators, at least to the public. Could CERN have authorized the making of this video? Possibly to debunk accusations of their occult agenda? If they made a video about an occult ritual that was cheesy enough to be laughed at by the public, it would cast a net of lunacy over those who proposed any theories about CERN's connection with the occult. Let's investigate further. Follow me down. There are other odd connections between CERN and Satanic symbolism. CERN's logo is designed based on a synchrotron particle accelerator. One source states, originally, the design was going to resemble the outline of a schematic of a synchrotron, but the problem with that was, CERN's logo would have looked like a black hole. Not good. So what we did with this logo design was remove a couple lines, shorten and angle a line in the opposite direction, off-center it all, then add another circle with a line sticking up to help break up the original design, and that's how CERN's logo came to be. However, these modifications conveniently changed the logo into a 666 design. Another interesting connection between CERN and the Satanic is that a large part of the facility is located in Saint-Jean-Puy, France. In Roman times, the empire had a territory in this location with a temple in honor of Apollyon, which means destroyer, or Abaddon in Hebrew, which is associated with the bottomless pit. The people that lived there believed the location was a gateway to the underworld. Sounds a lot like a metaphor for the modern CERN facility, which is physically underground and may open doors to other dimensions as postulated by Sergio Bertolucci, who is the Director of Research and Scientific Computing at CERN. In Revelations 9:11, the Bible states, "And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon." It is interesting to note that this chapter and verse together make 9/11, and at the World Trade Center Memorial Site, which commemorates the attacks on 9/11, we also find bottomless pit symbolism. Also related to the underworld is the Cernunnos, or the god of the underworld in Celtic polytheism. He is depicted wearing horns or antlers, which calls to mind another satanic underground connection in Switzerland. Gothard Base Tunnel, which was opened on June 1st, 2016, is the longest and deepest rail tunnel in the world, spanning over 57 kilometers. It cost a whopping $11 billion to build and took 17 years to complete. An elaborate opening ceremony was performed for some very powerful people, like Chancellor Angela Merkel of Germany, President Francois Hollande of France, and the Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi. The abstract operatic performance to mark the tunnel's opening, which was supposed to celebrate the ideals of European unification, was considered bizarre by most and satanic by many. The main actor in this surreal piece was a goat man who presided like Lucifer over the ceremony. Could this tunnel be connected, maybe even physically, with CERN? Follow me down. Before we get into the analysis of this ceremony, it is important to consider the date that the ceremony took place on. June 1st marks the time of year Saturn was closest to Earth in 2016. The name Satan is derived from Saturn. In ancient times, Saturn was thought to be the farthest planet from the Sun. The Sun represented light and goodness, and thus Saturn became associated with dark and evil. In paganism, Saturn was represented by the great god Pan, who was a horned creature, half goat and half man. Our modern depiction of Satan derives from this character. As the Gothard Tunnel ceremony begins, we see the actors dressed like workers, walking into the train station like robots. They are all different nationalities, sexes, ages, but nobody stands out. They are lost in a conglomerate. Their work uniforms could easily be mistaken for prison uniforms. They raise and lower their right hands in a passionless salute to the elite whom they work for, whom they build the tunnels for, who sit in the audience watching this very performance. Then the first train car enters. This feels reminiscent of the unsuspecting people who were herded like cattle to their demise in concentration camps during the Holocaust, obedient to authority until the point of death. At some point they realize they are headed for the slaughter, but it's too late and there's no way out. The workers have served their purpose, and now they are to be exterminated, their souls sacrificed. Next, the first train of passengers arrives. The passengers are portrayed as hypnotized under the spell of the Angel of Death. Her sexuality controls them, similar to how sex and advertising controls the masses. The public are like cattle, bred to create the next generation of workers who will be enslaved to the elite until their time comes to die. We, the masses, are allowed to become just smart enough to complete the task at hand, but kept too stupid to see beyond it. Our carnal pleasures are fed so we feel comfortable, while our minds and spirits are left to rot, and thus we lack the wisdom to see the doom that awaits us. Soon, her dance turns to one of destruction. The elite know they have us hooked, addicted to worldly pleasures, temporal success, and so they flaunt their agenda in our faces without fear of retaliation. Notice the Illuminati triangle on the backs of the workers. We are branded like cattle. They are breeding us, herding us, milking us for all we have until we're too old, weak, and useless for them, at which point they'll send us to the ritual slaughter. Just think about this concept on a microcosm. Take cows, for example. A handful of humans lord over a herd of cattle on a farm. The cows, however, having been born into this life of slavery, don't know anything better and eventually walk willingly into the slaughter, unaware of their impending doom. That said, I have seen instances in which one cow waiting to be slaughtered sees the cow in front of him or her being slaughtered, makes the mental connection that this will be its fate too, and then tries to break free. However, like the doomed workers aboard the train, it is too late. With the exception of a minority of people who refrain from eating animals due to religion or who are concerned with animal rights, the vast majority of the world is happy to comply with the slaughter of animals for human consumption because the taste brings us pleasure and the meat industry is a billion-dollar one. As long as the elite look at the masses like the masses look at cattle, wouldn't they be willing to do to us as we do to the animals? You may be thinking that people are smarter than cows, and they would never allow themselves to fall into this trap, but we already have. As humans, we are born into a material world. We grow up being told that it is necessary to work to survive, and we are even made to feel badly about ourselves morally if we think otherwise. Laziness carries a bad connotation, especially in capitalist societies like America and countries in the EU. So we are led to believe that in order to find happiness in life and to be a good citizen, we must work an artificial schedule, usually between the hours of 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. For most people, their daily toil is something they don't like to do. It's just the way we have been given by our society and government to make ends meet. This cycle of work goes on until we are, say, 65 years old, at which point we are no longer of much use to the system. Most of us are physically and mentally ailing by that point thanks to a bad diet of GMOs and fluoride we've been kept on. However, the propaganda tells us that now we've earned relaxation. Now that we've sacrificed our best years to an invisible authority, we can finally rest, do nothing, change nothing, and wait for death. We are the cash cows for the corporations, the global elite. Another train comes into the station. This train holds the enlightened man. He is alone, apart from the crowd, one of the few in a sea of ignorance. He desperately tries to destroy the infrastructure, but cannot because it is too large for him to take on alone. He is imprisoned by chains. Like a man who understands the truth in a world of people telling him he is crazy, he looks driven mad. The train is led by ignorant workers who probably think of him as a misfit rather than a fellow human. We are leading each other by the hand into the furnace. Yet another train car comes in. The Alps have a long history of being filled with demons and mysterious creatures. These creatures and the rituals associated with them date back to pre-Christian times when pagan and Celtic beliefs filled the mountains. Illuminati ceremonies are based on these Celtic rituals and occur around the solstice, equinox, and other times of astrological significance. Celtic mythology says that knights went on a pilgrimage to a cave in Station Island where they would make a journey to the center of the earth. The name Station Island gives more significance to why this Celtic pagan ceremony is being held in a train station. Like the knights, the audience has made a pilgrimage to the Gothard Tunnel to go on a journey to the center of the earth. Out of these bottomless pits emerge strange creatures. Here we see those creatures, ruled by who other than the Cernunnos, who is introduced with a fit of demonic laughter. Satan and his demons have been freed from inside the earth thanks to the door being opened by Switzerland, by scientists at CERN, and workers in the Gothard Tunnel. In modern times, we have allowed science to replace myth and spirituality. The elite have done a great job at making it seem like the spiritual world is completely separate from the physical one. However, these realms interact, and what is done in one dimension can have repercussions in another. Most of the scientists at CERN are probably unaware of any type of satanic agenda and merely hell-bent, excuse the pun, on science for the sake of science, blissfully unaware of the consequences their actions have in the spiritual realm. The same goes for the tunnel workers. For most, the building of the tunnel is simply a job and is completely removed from anything related to opening doors for demonic energy. The elite, however, are well aware of how these planes of reality are connected, and that is why there are such close ties between, say, the President of the United States and the Pope. Before the ceremony started, he was blessed by a priest, a rabbi, and an imam, signifying a tie between religion, science, and art, just like the plaque on the Shiva statue at CERN points out. The interfaith ceremony also normalizes the New World Order idea of a unified global religion. Hitler is another example of a leader who is obsessed with world domination as well as Celtic mythology and so-called pseudoscientific experiments like Die Glocke. But I digress. A pagan procession enters the station. At the front, a woman carries a sacrificial lamb. The cult of Dionysus, associated with the satyr, wine, ecstasy, and intoxication, have a tradition of sacrificing lambs to honor Pylakos, who guards the infernal gate. The lamb is also a symbol representing Jesus in Christianity, and thus this act can be interpreted as a sacrifice of Jesus now that the Cernunnos has risen to power. The energy of the performers increases towards the point of ecstasy. We see the Cernunnos lustfully dancing with a young woman, and the audience is bathed in a hellish blood-like red light. Then, there is a moment of calm. A defeated yodeler takes the stage. He is like a remnant of the past, out of place and time, bound to be destroyed by the evils of this modernity. His song is eerie and ghost-like, as if he is already dead, as if he is just a lost spirit wandering these mountains like he used to. The light comes on red again, and he is seen fleeing the station. The satanic mist rises again, and the trains start rolling in. The enlightened man from the beginning of the performance can be seen again, only this time he is fixing the infrastructure rather than trying to dismantle it. Is there nobody who can break free from the oppression? A national anthem of sorts starts playing. A parade rushes in. People are decked out in fancy costumes. Politicians wave, clergy members wave, the Pope waves. The mood is joyous, celebratory. Despite this scene being the complete opposite of the pagan procession that occurred only a few minutes ago, it is perhaps the scariest part of the entire act because it is exactly what we would expect the opening ceremony of a tunnel to look and feel like. The scene is like a sick parody of all those ribbon-cutting ceremonies and town parades that we have become so accustomed to seeing. The message here is clearly that the last half hour of horrors is the pagan reality that lies beneath the surface of your manicured happy-go-lucky televised reality. The Pope better not take off those glasses, lest he wants to reveal his demonic soul to the public. The yodeler reappears. He sets a chair out for himself and starts eating lunch in the middle of the celebration. He seems happy and content. This all looks very normal to him. A large truck drives up behind him and starts beeping for him to move out of the way. The truck has an antlered skull attached to the front of it, but it is decorated so as not to look so evil. This is another clear meta symbol of how evil is hidden beneath the facade of celebrations such as this one, the Gothard Tunnel ceremony the audience is seeing. The celebration unfolding on stage is a celebration within a celebration, all which reduced to the reality of a pagan ritual. The man blocking this giant truck of oppression, bringing the parade to a halt, also brings to mind Tank Man, the protester who stood in front of Chinese tanks on June 5th, 1989, after the Chinese government suppressed the Tiananmen Square protests. This is particularly interesting because Tank Man is often used as an example of the Mandela effect. Many people have a clear memory of seeing a video of Tank Man being run over. However, the video that exists now shows otherwise. CERN has been blamed for creating the Mandela effect and other space-time manipulations. The parade descends into a sort of waltz, the public, the authority, and Satan all intermingled dancing together. A woman wears a false head indicative of Satan's deception, and a large red cloak of evil that envelops all of those below her. It seems like the demons have been integrated into our world. Their evil nature, which robs us of our humanity, has become mainstream and accepted as we remain drunk on blood, thinking we are happy. The next part of the ceremony begins outside and follows more or less the same narrative. Workers are hoisted up the projected rocky wall, only to fall back down to their demise, driving home the idea that their lives are expendable. The rock wall finally collapses completely as the tunnel boring machine used to carve out the Gothard-based tunnel breaks through. 8 workers' bodies are superimposed over the tunnel boring machine, making it look very similar to the Atlas detector at the LHC in CERN. Many have speculated that this device at CERN is actually a stargate or a portal that allows interdimensional travel, using the image of the tunnel boring machine and the tunnel workers to form another stargate or portal symbolizes the dimensional door opened at the Gothard base. On the surface, the tunnel is a means of physical transportation, but the deeper objective of the Gothard-based tunnel lies in opening a passageway to another dimension, an opening to the underworld. Claims of portals to other dimensions have existed since ancient times. One example can be found in Peru. The Gate of the Gods is a cutout in the giant rock near Lake Titicaca. According to legend, the first priest of the Incas activated a portal here using a golden disc that fell from the sky. Shamans witnessing the event explained that the man simply disappeared into the rock. He was never seen again. A circular impression can be seen in the rock, and many believe this is where the golden disc was placed to activate the Stargate. Another ancient portal is claimed to be beneath the temple of Seti I in Egypt. Inside the temple, strange hieroglyphics resembling a modern-day helicopter, spaceship, and boat can be found, suggesting possible time travel. Interestingly, many of the boats are said to carry souls from this life to the afterlife, which are painted on ancient Egyptian temples, resemble the shape scientists used to describe wormholes. Michael Schratt, a U.S. military aerospace historian and pilot, claimed that in 2003, the site was used to send an ET visitor home. Ben Rich, the former Lockheed Skunk Works director, once said, "We now have the technology to bring ET home." The Mutual UFO Network International Director Jan Harzen was dissatisfied with the abstractness of Rich's statement and inquired further.
He said, "Well, let me ask you, how does ESP work?" I said, "I don't know, all points in space and time are connected." He looked at me and said, "That's how it works." He turned around and walked out of the room.
The Egyptian connection adds significance to the pyramids illustrated on the backs of the workers' jackets. Stargates and portals are not merely something that exists in the realm of science fiction or mythical stories. NASA describes these entrances and exits to wormholes as X-points, or electron diffusion regions. They occur in places where the magnetic field of the Earth connects with the magnetic field of, say, the Sun. When this happens, an uninterrupted path opens. These gateways open and close dozens of times a day, and can result in the flow of energetic particles which are responsible for heating the upper atmosphere, geomagnetic storms, and polar auroras. When speaking of extra dimensions, CERN's own Sergio Bertolucci says, "Out of this door might come something, or we might send something through it." Once the rocks fall away and the portal has been opened, we see the workers jerk their bodies as if they are possessed. The demonic energy sealed behind the mountains has been released like the evils from Pandora's box and has infiltrated the souls of the workers, who begin to strip and spar with each other before descending into an orgiastic dance. The ritual orgy is very important in Satanism. Demonic entities feed like vampires on energy. When we are addicted to food, drugs, sex, anything that steals energy away from us, we can become victims, easily controlled and manipulated by those forces stealing our energy. The workers have become corrupted and are essentially invoking the devil. This is a microcosm of what is happening on a global scale as humanity gradually gives away all of its energy to dark entities like the global elite who are ushering in a new world order under false pretenses. Be wary when you hear governments or elite individuals using phrases like humanitarian act, unification, or freedom when describing policy goals. On the video screen, we see workers falling to their death down a bottomless pit. Another way to think about a bottomless pit is a wormhole to another dimension, a tunnel to the underworld. And then, 3 ghosts rise from the pit. A giant eyeball like the Illuminati's all-seeing eye watches over the ceremony as the stripped workers return, now as ghosts, draped in veils. We have been sacrificed, our energy used to usher in Satan's rule. The face of the Cernunnos appears on the screen. 3 scarab beetles rise. In ancient Egyptian mythology, the scarab beetle is associated with the solar god Khepri, who pushes the sun across the sky as a beetle pushes a ball of dung. During the night, the sun is believed to be rolled through the other realm. Therefore, the god Khepri and scarab imagery represents creation, rebirth, and transmigration of the soul. In this ceremony, the souls of the workers have been reincarnated as ghosts of the underworld. The backs of the scarabs have a skull designed on them, which further insinuates that in this reality, we are more likely to be reborn as the living dead than anything human. A ring of eyes watches over the performance. Some of the eyes seem drugged, nearly asleep, while others seem afraid, much like the eyes of the workers who are either ignorant and thus metaphorically asleep, or wide awake in terror. The eyes, especially the unblinking eye in the center, are also reminiscent of the Illuminati's all-seeing eye, which presides over all good and bad, much like Shiva in Hinduism. The all-seeing eye, such as depicted on the back of the $1 bill, comes from the Eye of Horus. Horus is said in ancient Egyptian mythology to be the sky, the sun his right eye, and the moon his left. The Eye of Horus, or sometimes Wedjat, another powerful solar god, represents royal power given from deities. Considering the earthly atrocities government elites are willing to commit, it seems that they must believe in a divine right to rule, and so the Eye of Horus is a perfect representation of their theory, or rationalization. This image of an eye of ultimate control, or more specifically a ring of eyes, also has biblical roots, such as in Ezekiel 1:18, which speaks of wheels covered in eyes representing God's ultimate awareness over good and evil and ultimate control over nature. The global elite obviously emulate this type of knowledge and power, as it is shown through their attempts in institutions like CERN to control and alter the nature of reality. Once again, the all-seeing eye is a perfect symbol to represent their agenda. The screeches of one of the spirits can be heard as the Cernunnos brutally rapes her. He then proceeds to die in a grand inversion of the crucifixion, a satanic mockery of the death of Jesus Christ. His disciples stand in back of him, laughing instead of wailing. We see an upside-down tree of life playing in the background as the procession enters in what looks like a black mass, a grand inversion. The time of modernism is here, man fused with the machine, a time of technological sexuality, transhumanism. Much like part 1, a celebration ensues. Politicians stand with townspeople, workers, and the devil. They move in slow motion, referring again to CERN's manipulation of time, and then snap back to normal movement, revealing that it is not they who are in control of their actions, their perceptions of time. Clocks move back and forth out of time. The lady in red, draped in blood, draped in evil, takes center stage. Pregnant with the spawn of Satan, she labors in childbirth until eventually bearing the Antichrist, ushering in a new age. An age that flips Christianity on its head. The demons move into the audience, taunting the public, connecting this show with reality. The end of the performance commences with the actors bowing to the clock, honoring time, the unnatural structure. The physical train arrives on time, again driving home the message that this ceremony is all about time, its manipulation and creation. It's CERN's manipulation of time and the Gotthard tunnels stress on the importance of an artificial reality which holds us captive. Aside from the dark spiritual sides of these Swiss portals, there are many from the scientific community who also have doubts about CERN in terms of the physical safety to our planet. Others have spoken out about the railway, its destruction of nature, and its invitation of big business to a previously pristine area. Lawsuits have been filed against CERN in fear of them creating black holes, ripping a hole in the time-space continuum, and destroying the Earth. But luckily, this hasn't happened yet, or at least as far as we know. Could CERN have destroyed this planet in another dimension, an alternative reality? Just look at the music video they released in 2014 to Pharrell's song Happy. In it, we see a physicist wearing two signs, one reading Bond number 1, the other Mandela. The first James Bond actor from Casino Royale, which came out in 1954, the year that also marks CERN's opening, was Barry Nelson. Combine those names and you get Nelson Mandela. Then jump to the end of the video where you see the number 4664 on one side of the screen and the number 9 on the other. If we flip the number 9, as so often happens in numerology related to Satanism, we get another 6. Bring these together and we form 46664, which was Nelson Mandela's prison number. And subsequently, the AIDS charity concert honoring Mandela, which featured many Illuminati celebrities. Furthermore, the number 46664 itself is peculiar because besides containing 666, the mark of the beast, which it does contain, many remember the number originally being 4664 until it seemed to mysteriously disappear to 46664. Could this separated inverted 6 be yet another symbol alluding to CERN's manipulation of this reality? In the quantum reality in which we live, where an infinite number of parallel universes could exist, differing from each other only in the most minute aspects, even something as minute as 4664 versus 46664 in relation to Nelson Mandela, it seems possible that a facility like CERN, which is conducting experiments with such vast amounts of energy, could develop the ability to merge those parallel universes. We would probably never even notice a difference unless something which affected our collective memory was altered, because we could then find external validation in our belief that a shift had occurred from our fellow humans, or rabbits. Could the work at CERN be a continuation of Nazi science experiments which were searching for keys with which to control the laws of physics so those in charge could rule as gods over the Earth? There are still many unanswered questions relating to CERN and their scientific agenda. Please let me know in the comments if you have any information on CERN's latest breakthroughs and what they could mean. What have you experienced as a result of the Mandela effect? I would like to begin compiling a list of anomalies, and since the differences from one parallel universe to another may be so small they won't appear on the public radar, you sharing your personal moments of seeing through the Matrix will help me create a more in-depth analysis of the phenomenon. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep digging.
Left you a message about something that is happening right now while you're sitting in this auditorium. It's in CERN, Switzerland. Now, you may not be aware of what's going on over there, but there's a thing over there that's called a Large Hadron Collider, and it is an accelerator. It accelerates particles and then brings them to the point of collision. So this Large Hadron Collider was started up just a few days ago, and it's still in the initial process of being brought online completely. You say, what in the world does something like that have to do with me and the Bible? It has a lot to do with you and the Bible. I cannot and will not attempt to speak as a physicist. It would make me look like a fool. My purpose this morning is to try to be a liaison between them and you. It's to try to take what's going on in that collider and break it down to where I can understand it, and I can give it out so you can understand it, to where it makes an application to your life and to this world as we know it today. For what is happening in that collider is an astounding thing. So I want to read something to you this morning from what's called a theoretical physicist. This man, his name is Stephen Hawking. He's well known throughout the world. Anyone that has anything to do with nuclear energy or has anything to do with physics knows this man. And he is one that some rate even on the level of Einstein and of that level. And so I want to read to you what this man has to say about what's happening right now in CERN, Switzerland. Listen carefully. These are the words of Stephen Hawking. He recently warned the reactivation in March of CERN's Large Hadron Collider could pose grave dangers to our planet. The ultimate reality, check, we are warned. Hawking has come straight out and said the God particle, and this is what you've heard referred to time and again as the Higgs boson particle, the God particle found by CERN could destroy the universe. Now let that settle in. This man is an atheist, and he says there is no God. Yet he says that what's happening right now in CERN, Switzerland, and I'll give you what they're trying to do in a moment, what's happening at this very minute in CERN, Switzerland, has the potential to destroy the universe. This is a theoretical physicist. Now, physicists come in all kinds of sizes. Astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson has also sounded the alarm in a hypothetical manner by telling anyone who might want to blow up a planet how to do so is this CERN's attempt to do so by attempting to recreate the Big Bang within a man-made structure. This has frightened Stephen Hawking so much. Do they know that they know what they are doing?
And that's sort of the stage we're at right now. We're getting closer and closer. We think it looks very much like the Higgs, but we're not sure yet. We need to get a little bit closer to be absolutely certain.
Ask yourself, how much energy is keeping it together? Neil deGrasse Tyson told co-host Eugene Merman on his Star Talk radio show, then you put more than that amount of energy into the object, it will explode. Now I think I've got your attention. I've quoted two physicists. These are scientists. These men do not agree with what's happening in CERN, Switzerland right now. There is a 17-mile long accelerator that lies 300 feet beneath the surface of the ground. This area is where France and Switzerland come together. So part of this accelerator is located in France and part of it in Switzerland. It is a joint European project. The United States of America is there as an observer, but the brain power that's going in to this experimentation originates in Europe. They are attempting to recreate what they believe happened that brought all of this into existence as being the Big Bang. Now, you and I know from the book of Genesis, chapter number 1, that in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. He spoke it into existence. They are finding things, and this is what's important for us to understand today. They are discovering things that they did not expect to discover as they get deeper and deeper into this experimentation and development and research and so forth. They are beginning to find out that there is a whole lot more to the creation than they had ever given thought to before. They're beginning to find out that there's something going on here that boggles the human mind, that literally blows us apart when we try to even comprehend what's happening. This 17-mile long underground tube that is located there in Switzerland has, I think, 4 or 5 different points where they collide with, some say, protons and maybe something else, but particles that are being moved at or above the speed of light inside this collider. Now, for your information, there is one near us in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, but it is not nearly as large as what we're dealing with here. And apparently, the larger the collider, the more speed that they can attain, and the more they're able to get deeper into what they're looking for. They're looking for the very building blocks of what brought all of this together. To give you an analogy, let's say you have a house. You observe that house, it's beautiful. You think, my goodness, let's see how this is put together. And so you start taking the house apart and you expect to find nails, but instead you find glue. That fascinates you that much more because you find glue holding this house together. You wonder to yourself, what was this glue like before its hardened state? Because you see, once the glue glues the things together, it hardens, solidifies. They want to know what the glue was like in its liquid state. So they're going through this to go back to that point to where they can separate and find out what this was like then. And by doing that, of course, they can build on the information and knowledge that they attain. Now, what's going to follow in the message this morning is the implications of what's going on. But let me give you just a little bit of what has been happening. Where they have done this experimentation, strange things are happening, unexpected by the scientists. Paranormal phenomena, they like to call it. Apparitions, ghosts, all kinds of demonic spirits are beginning to manifest themselves in ways. Here we have, in CERN, Switzerland, a huge wheel. Inside that wheel is a Hindu god, and his name is Shiva. He does a dance of destruction inside that wheel, and his purpose is he is one of the triad gods, one of the greatest gods of Hinduism. Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma. Brahma is the god of creation. Vishnu is the god of preservation. But Shiva is the god of destruction. The way the Hindu sees it is that when Shiva destroys, it's not for the purpose of annihilation. He destroys so that Brahma can come and recreate. So now when the Hindus, since they're scientists to CERN. They put this out there in front. And so what these people are doing with the collider is destroying what comes together, but for the purpose of recreating and find out what brought it into existence to begin with. Are you following me? Now here we have men that are scientists on an average of an IQ of anywhere from 160 to 200 or even above. These are some of the smartest brains in all the world. No question about it whatsoever. I pick up physicists and try to read some of this stuff. I think, good night. Forget me. That's for a brain that is wired that way. No question. But we were told when Darwin's theory of evolution came out and became vogue, that it would destroy the foundations of Christianity, and this old book that we hold in our hands, this old outdated Bible, would no longer be relevant, and a lot of people bought into it. Because after all, Darwin is scientific. But it's an amazing thing now that 150 years later, we have some of the greatest scientists in the world that are becoming very religious. Because here they've got Shiva, they've got dances to Shiva, and they are definitely being connected with Shiva as they're finding things. Let me give you one example. In one of their collisions, when they collided these particles together, they saw things. They were apparitions they didn't expect to see. They didn't fit in any model. They didn't fit anywhere. They don't belong, but they could not deny the reality of it. Something was going on inside there that they could not explain. And it was scary for them. For the scientist has his paper and his pencil and his books, and if it doesn't fit in his paper and his pencil and his books, it's out the window. They don't understand. They have a hard time accepting the fact that there is a spirit world out there. That spirit world was created by a spirit being, an almighty, eternal, absolute being that is from everlasting to everlasting, who put in me what I am today by the power of Almighty God and by the power of the new birth. But a scientist like that will never admit that, because that takes it out of his control and his power. He's got to be able to demonstrate his theory and put it into motion. But anyway, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I want to leave this with you. I want you to think about what I'm saying. Stephen Hawking, and a theoretical physicist, has warned these people, you are about to open Pandora's box. And once you open Pandora's box, you cannot put back in what came out of that box. Now let's talk about some of the stuff that's going on. I think I'm trying to lay a foundation for you to get you to understand what we're dealing with. So the house, you take it apart and you see the glue and you find it in its hardened state, and then you want to find out, what can I do to bring this back to its original state, and then what can I learn from that? So you've got to be able to take it back. You've got to be able to go back. You've got to move through time. That's what you're doing. You're moving through time. This is what it's about. They want to know what that matter was like before it came into its present form. They must determine what holds it together. They must break down the element and see what holds it together. Now, folks, if you know your Bible, you know what's holding it together. This is a big deal to these people. What's holding this together? The Bible says all things are upholded by the word of his power. A word is a spiritual thing. You can never put it under a microscope, but it's real. Who sealed you until the day of redemption? The Holy Ghost. Who put life inside your soul, where your heart is set on fire when you read his word and pray? The Holy Ghost. Who in this house would deny this morning the reality of a spirit being that saved you and wrote your name in the Lamb's Book of Life and indwelled you right now? But they want to know. They want to find out. CERN allows them to examine particles in their initial state, not after it's bonded together. So what has come from CERN? Now listen carefully to what I'm going to say to you. This is not exhaustive, but this is what I've gotten so far. What has come out of this? They have a list of their accomplishments, their achievements, and all of that. That's all well and good. But one thing for certain is what's called antimatter. How many's ever heard of antimatter? Antimatter. Now, if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago what antimatter was, I'd have said, well, it's matter, it's against matter. Didn't have a clue. I wouldn't know where to start, where to end, where I was if I got there. Let me tell you what antimatter, some of the characteristics of it. There are those that believe that for everything in the universe that is matter, that there is a corresponding antimatter. Corresponding. That there's a connection between the two. That matter, for example, take a piece of wood. It's matter. This is matter. This is matter. 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 It's something physical. Or it's something real, all right? If you act upon it, act upon that matter, it can burn. Wood, for example. You've acted upon it, but you've had to act upon it. You've had to do something to cause the wood to burn. Antimatter, on the other hand, is a very unstable thing that does not need to be acted on. Unless you do something to contain it, it's going to burn. It's very volatile, and it is very, very, very uncertain as to what all it's capable of doing. Antimatter is a product of this experimentation in CERN, Switzerland. Antimatter is coming from it. Antimatter is so powerful that one man says that one grain of antimatter is the equivalent of 4 atomic bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima. I got on the internet, did a little research, and I found out they call it Little Boy, the first bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, then later on the one on Nagasaki. I thought, what was in that bomb? What exploded? You know, we understand nuclear fission and all these other big terms. We understand some kind of a nuclear reaction took place. Everybody knows that, right? Some kind of a nuclear reaction took place. But then I got to digging a little deeper and I said, now, what was in there? And from what I can find out, it was no more than from 9 to 13 grams of something inside their matter that exploded. And so I have to understand their scale. What are you talking about? You're talking about a handful? It doesn't sound like much to me, does it? In other words, the bomb that exploded at Hiroshima, when they split the atom, when they released the energy from the atom by the process they used, are you telling me that there was no more there than what would be a handful? I'm not saying I understand all that, but I want you to think about it for a minute. If no more than a handful of this material, this matter, that's what you'll get if you look on Wikipedia and some of these research, it'll say matter. It'll say 8 to 13 grams of matter was used to explode and release energy and heat. And I would imagine, I don't know their scale, I don't know, in other words, is their gram the same as a gram of peanuts, a grain of peanuts or something, or is it a different scale? I don't know. But it wouldn't seem to me to be a whole lot to begin with. So, if that did that, 1 grain of antimatter is the equivalent of 4 of them. How much is 1 grain of antimatter? They say it takes a long time to produce a single pound of antimatter, but now because of their technology and what they're doing at CERN, Switzerland, that they can produce this stuff much quicker, and they're beginning to produce antimatter. When they produce antimatter, strange things happen. They took some of it and they put it in a college. They won't name the college, and for reasons I understand. And the college had the facilities to contain it. Antimatter has to be contained. So they put it in a college to contain it. Strange things started happening at the college. People started hallucinating, having visions. People were going wild. All kinds of crazy stuff was happening. Apparitions. In plain words, there's a connection between this stuff and the spirit world. Now I want you to think for a minute. Don't get ahead of me, just think. The Bible said, he that letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. 2 Thessalonians chapter number 2. God Almighty is going to let them go so far, but He's not going to go any further. The spirit world, folks, is not affected by the physical. Demons, all this other stuff, probably couldn't care less whether you've got matter or antimatter. It's a spirit being. But to fit into the great deception that's coming, and it's about here right now. I mean, a deception like this world has never known before. To fit into this great deception, they can sure draw these men in to make them think that because they have reached this certain point in their scientific analysis, that they're bringing in these spirit beings. It'll make true believers out of them, but it'll do more than make true believers out of them. NASA said just a few days ago, they said just a few days ago, that by the year 2020, that we will definitely come in contact with aliens, beings from another planet. Now we're talking about scientists. We're talking about Darwin's crowd. We're talking about the crowd that threw the Bible out and said it's old, archaic, anachronistic. It doesn't belong today. We're talking about that bunch. We're too smart for the Bible. We're scientists. Yet this crowd is saying that in just a few years that they're going to know that they're going to come in contact with alien beings. I thought to myself, my. You boys, have you always known that you've got a certain date set? And what you think is an alien being is really a demon? There are no aliens out there, folks. Forget that stuff, okay? There's nothing out there. You get into the third heaven, you get into the abode of God. There's nothing up there. All these UFOs, spacecraft, flying saucers, all this stuff, that's all demonic. It's real, but it's demonic. It's not real like we understand reality, but it's really real. It's demonic. I see a great deception beginning to develop. Yeah. That in their analysis and in their laboratories that they believe in, that they've got their heart and soul tied up in, little things begin to show up, stuff that they can't explain, that sucks them in to begin to understand, well, maybe this is being affected, it's being acted upon by something that we don't understand completely. And this spirit being that comes from out there, that comes down to this world, they accept with open arms because they're willing to put Shiva out there dancing around in the cosmos and destroying and then bringing a new creation in. Here are these wise, smart, brilliant men, and they're willing to believe that there's something more than what can be measured in a microscope and can be put in a petri dish, that there's something going on, and you better believe there is. There's something going on. Now, the spirit world that I just preached to you about, you can see that. Now, what about the physical world? Let's go back to Hawking for a minute. He said, remember, he's an atheist. He doesn't believe in spirits. He's a dialectical materialist. He's a Bolshevik. He believes that what they're liable to do here in CERN, Switzerland, is unleash the gates of hell.
This will be rolled over in fire. With their hands tied, it will be thrown.
Sorry, I dropped my Ray-Bans. What's that sound? The beam! It's starting! Ouch! Something really, really small just hit me. Ouch! And again! Ow! Ow! Ow!
Dear God.
Ow! 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 I feel like I'm gonna fart. I feel like I'm gonna fart.